Hey everyone, how's it going? Travis and Susie here from the Wolf Hunters. We got a reaction video for you. We got this link right here. You can find that link in the description box, which is below the video. There's a blue link. Click it and pick it. You can request music, movie scenes, comedy skits, live performances, sports, and more. Today's video is brought to you by Gracchus Wainwright, bringing us How to Argue Like a Gentleman, by the Gentleman's Gazette.
Ooh! Gracchus Wainwright says, "Howdy! It's your boy Gracchus here to close another gap. It's been a spell since we were last down the Gentleman's Gazelle Trail, and I don't believe your channel has any videos that talk about how to deal with confrontation or argue by cowboy rules. Our friend Raphael, who's wearing his best bib and tucker as always, doesn't call them cowboy rules, but that's them exactly what they are. I hope y'all find this informative as well as entertaining. Happy trails, and please stop at 1458.
All right.
All right. You know, sometimes
welcome back to the Gentleman's Gazette.
Sometimes you have to know how to argue.
Yeah.
Make sure that you subscribe to the channel.
And there's a proper way.
And you know what? There's a proper way to argue, and the reason is because if you want someone to hear you, I actually don't know if that's what he's about to say, but I would say, if you want someone to actually hear you, you have to do it right.
Oh, it says argument, etiquette, but it also says debate.
Fight and confrontation, do's and don'ts.
I like this.
Sometimes you don't start it, but you had better finish it.
If you're here, don't change this. You might need to learn something.
Everyone needs.
Gonna need to learn.
In today's video, we discuss how to argue like a gentleman.
Have swag. Have wit.
All right.
How a person argues strikes right at the heart of a person's personality. And if you're threatened or you're in a defensive position, you may behave differently, but that truly reflects your character. If you want to learn about how we define what a gentleman is today, please check out this video here, and then we can continue on focusing just on the argument and what you should and should not do. First off, I went to law school, and like many lawyers, I like being right. Now, I think a lot of people like to be right, but that doesn't mean that you always have to be about winning an argument. It's about learning and growth. And personally, I've learned a lot more from my mistakes than from the things that I did that were right or where I won. If we go back in time, in 1727, Benjamin Franklin created the Leather Apron Club, which was a club where men would have arguments. In order to be admitted, you had to meet 4 criteria, or basically answer 4 questions. 1. Do you have disrespect for any of the current members? The right answer would have been no. 2. Do you love mankind, regardless of religion or profession? The right answer would have been yes. And this club consisted of a wide range of different people, of different socioeconomic statuses and education
Sounds like a
levels.
cool club so far.
Of course, they were all white men, but that's a different topic of discussion. 3. Do you feel people should ever be punished for their opinions or modes of worship? The right answer would have been no. For some people, that may seem obvious, but looking at those, it emphasizes that truth stands above all, which is based on fact, and it means even if you're wrong and you feel like you're losing, it's still the truth that should come out on top. Now, these 4 questions show that you have mutual respect, that you're open-minded, that you're tolerant, and that you're welcoming to other people's beliefs and are open to that.
This is rare these days.
Why is it so hard to have a productive argument? And I think there are a number of reasons that go right to the core of how we feel, and it's important to think about them rationally.
People don't want the truth,
so
they just want to be right.
Overcome a inner feeling that may be unfair and unjust towards
their truth is right.
Right, and when someone feels like their perspective is the ultimate perspective, you know, they're not even open to learning or growing at that point.
Quick to listen, slow to speak, right?
the person we're talking to. The first barrier of productive argument is opinion protectionism. What I mean by that is that we all feel that we're entitled to our opinion and that we don't have to back it up with facts so other people can understand why we have this opinion. So, for example, legally, I'm entitled to believe that 1 + 1 is 3. However, based on...
That is the second time we heard this today. 1 +
It
1
is?
= 3, or at least the second time I heard it today.
But it's true. You are entitled to believe that. You cannot back it up with fact, but you are entitled to believe that. We actually recently told one of our children that if they wanted to do something that we previously would not allow them to do, that they would have to come to us with a legitimate argument to back why they think that they should be able to do or go to this thing, and then we could debate it.
Yeah.
They decided not to do it.
I'm entitled to believe that 1 + 1 is 3.
However,
based on the rules of math that everyone knows, people will not respect me if I simply say 1 + 1 is 3 and I'm not going to change your mind and you can't tell me anything else. In my experience, if you believe that what you know is right and you're not open to change, this is the biggest barrier to having a productive argument. It's called dropping an anchor, and it stops conversation right there. And chances are it will end badly in name calling or other things, and people will be upset, and they will even remember it and look at you as someone who is not a person of reason.
I think that's a good way to bow out of one of those arguments. Like, if somebody does approach you and you're talking to them and they drop an anchor, you could be like, oh, I see that you just dropped an anchor, so we're just not going to agree. Then it makes it feel like, oh yeah, I'm standing firm where I think, I should stand without being like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Because it's not about not wanting to talk.
Yeah.
It's like, I see that you dropped an anchor and there's nowhere that we can't go anywhere from here. Yeah. I like that.
Fact or fairness. The second issue is that opinions and beliefs can be quite personal and fundamental.
Yeah.
Just think about politics, topics like abortion. And in the US specifically, it's very uncommon for people to have conversations about those topics because there's this kind of fear of having different opinions, and people much rather switch to small talk. However, as a gentleman, you should be able to present your point, talk about the pros and the cons, listen to the other person, admit to their valid points, and explain why you still think the way you do, without disrespecting the other person or giving them the feeling that their point of view is inferior to yours. The third barrier to a good argument is the belief that competition and winning or losing are more important than personal growth. Of course, we all like to win,
really good.
And it's a good feeling to be looked at by others and recognized as the winner. At the same time, if you just go into an argument wanting to win and wanting to be right and wanting to have the last word, you may not learn from the other person. You may not learn that you may be wrong. You may disregard something that may actually help you and get you further down along the way. So, in my opinion, that winning can be losing for yourself because you're not getting ahead in life and you're just stuck in your belief system. If
I love that.
you can't back up your opinion by proper facts that others reasonably understand, you may feel like the winner, but other people will.
I feel like oftentimes when people can't back up facts, they just turn to name calling and stuff like that.
That's what he said. But also he's saying, if you, let's just say you know something to be true, or you have an opinion that you feel very, very, very strongly about, but you don't have the facts to back it up, you might not feel like the winner, but you want other people to at least look at you like you're not a loser. I don't know.
will not look at you that way because they just think of you as a narcissistic dick. The fourth barrier of having a productive argument is the fear of being wrong. And as I mentioned,
I did not expect that from him. Was that etiquette?
Think of myself.
Wait, time out. He said it so like. He said it so professionally. Why did he do that?
Name calling with etiquette coming up next.
As thoughtful and thinking things through. So when I come up with a solution or an opinion, I truly believe that I've done my homework. At the same time, if I let my ego get in the way of accepting that maybe I have not done my proper homework and I have overlooked things or not considered certain points, and based on that, my opinion or whatever I say is maybe not quite right or maybe even terribly wrong, I have to be willing to admit that and admit fault. When you do that, you show vulnerability, and some people may consider that to be a weakness. However, I personally believe that showing others that you can change your mind and that you can be wrong and that you look at truth for its own sake rather than your personal interest makes them respect you a lot more, especially in the long run.
This guy
I fully
is sharp.
understand that traditional masculine moral models demand that a man shows no weakness, and weakness can be crying or admitting fault. But if you look at the great leaders in the world or successful businessmen, they admit mistakes and they move on. They take the ego out of things and rather look at what's beneficial to them. And growing is always more beneficial to you than being right for its own sake. Now, the gentleman's philosophy of an argument should be that discussions should always be encouraged. Because if you talk to other people, chances are you can always learn something from others, and that's a good thing, because you always want to improve yourself and be a better person. Also, opinions are not sacred. You have to be willing to sacrifice an opinion that you hold dear to your heart and maybe adjust it or transform it completely. I know it's hard, but winning should never be the goal. It goes against what you've learned in kindergarten and all along the way, where if you engage in something, you want to win. And competitiveness is good to a certain degree, but you should not try to just win and shout the other down, but be open and productive. And at the end of the day, that will win you more respect and will make you more successful in the long run. Now, that all sounds nice in theory. And it can be really tough if you have an opponent who doesn't respect those rules. Just the other day, for example, I was driving to a parking lot. There was a turn lane and a straight lane, and the arrows on the road had kind of faded. So I was in a turn lane, but I realized I wanted to go right. So I set my blinker, I drove over, and I went to my parking spot. When I got out of the car, a guy pretty much next door came out and said, "You're a really shitty driver." So I said, "I'm sorry if I cut you off. I didn't mean to do that." So he would go on and say, "You're a really shitty driver. You're a really shitty driver." So I could see he was upset. So I looked at his car, and he had actually parked in a rental car spot. He had blocked 2 spots entirely. And I said, "Well, you should look at your parking first." And when he felt attacked, he started calling me names. He said, "You're a brick, you're an asshole." And he was very aggressive. So I didn't respond to that. It was hard for me because, you know, when somebody calls you that, you want to be mean or sarcastic and say things along the lines of, well, if I would get advice, not from someone who can park like that, but I was able to control myself and not do that and basically walk away.
I feel like he's venting.
And when I came back to my car, I saw him and I wished him a good day. And he was still calling me names, but I just, got into my car and drove away. If you encounter those situations, sometimes it's best not to engage because those kind of people, they drag you down to their level and then they beat you with their experience because that's what they do all day long. So the essence of this story is if you want to be a gentleman, you have to stick to the rules.
I never even thought about that. Like they're well experienced in beating people down, putting them down, and things like that.
It's because they do it themselves also too all day long.
Probably.
Truthfully. I mean, if you have to argue that much and put people down to assert your position, then you must not feel very good about yourself.
Even if the other person doesn't. Another important point is that your body language is equally important as your tone of voice and what you say. For example, my wife always says, "You have the idiot face on," and when I do that, which is somewhat subconscious, she automatically feels defensive no matter what I say.
Like I'm an
so
idiot.
trying to understand what you do and how your voice changes and how your facial expressions change when you're upset or in disagreement, and being able to control that can really help in a situation of an argument. Now, how do you argue with a spouse? When you have a partner in life, there will always be arguments, because at the end of the day, you're different people, you have different points of views, and not having any arguments is a sign of an unhealthy relationship.
Right, you heard
so
it.
don't be afraid of having arguments from time to time.
Yes.
However, in those situations, it's even more important to stick to the gentlemanly
and it's
rules.
Even more hard.
Otherwise, your relationship may suffer, and it may even lead to a divorce down the line. So in those situations, the need to constantly win can really have a long-term damaging effect. So keep in mind that it's not always you who has to be right, but that you have to be open that the other person is right as well.
But what if you are always right?
Guys, no one is always right.
Even
if someone is mostly right.
Guys, that was a joke. That was a joke. I'm just kidding, all right? Leave me alone in the comments
Me and Travis like to call our fights
growth opportunities.
Yeah. But we don't fight.
Yeah. We mostly had to do that when we first got married. We had to learn.
Well, I mean, now if we argue, it's about really stupid
stuff,
crap.
Yeah. That doesn't
But
really
those
matter.
can get. I mean, those can though.
Yeah.
Those can. They can take hold of you. That stupid stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, to help with the stupid stuff, though, we also did another thing.
We did. And this is helpful. We don't always do it, but when we do it, it's good.
So if you're arguing about things, let's say it's 10 in the morning.
Let's say you're in a season of arguing about stupid things.
Yeah. Because what tends to happen is you start with something and then it just spirals into other things. And then you start to kind of pick fights with things that aren't really, they don't really matter, but you just want to kind of take a jab or whatever. So if you're arguing at 10 in the morning over something and it's probably stupid.
Yeah, like you dreamed of your spouse cheating. And so now you're angry at them.
So you basically say, okay, let's pick up this argument again. Let's put it on pause. Let's pick it up again later at 5 p.m. And then what happens is 5 p.m. comes around and you're like, oh, forget it. It wasn't that important. You realize, you were just in a moment. You were steamrolling and it just spiraled.
Yeah, you shelf that baby to see if it actually matters to you or not. And if it does, then you should talk about it.
Yeah, then you pick it back up.
Yeah, you pick it back up.
But usually your demeanor is different.
Yeah, you're in a different spot. You've thought about it. You've been introspective.
Yeah. Anyway.
But that you have to be open that the other person is right as well, and that you give it to them and that you admit that. Don't just brush concerns of your significant other aside or disengage and walk away or maybe pout. It's important to keep a dialogue going and to be honest and open until you resolve the issue.
Can't be afraid to hurt someone's feelings.
Forgive each other or admit the other person's position or continue in a meaningful way. That can be very emotional, but it's important to try to show that you work on something together rather than just you go to your corner and hoping that the other person comes after you. Don't bring up threats like I'm going to divorce you or I'm going to leave you or anything of that kind in an argument, because that is designed to shut down the conversation right then and there, which actually doesn't solve the issue. It just stops the discussion and the resolution. Very important. Don't bring up past transgressions or past fights that were already resolved. If they're truly not resolved, maybe you have to sit down and discuss.
So that is a problem that I've had. I don't think I really do it too much anymore. If maybe I don't do it at all. But if I saw a pattern of things, I will bring up the past in order to show the pattern. Or do you think that's okay?
I think it's case by case, because I think
I'm not saying it's even particularly with her.
Yeah.
But
I think that if a pattern is continuing and you're bringing it up to deal with the present situation, I think then it's valid. But I think if you're bringing it up to mount evidence against a person and slew them into a corner, then I think, that's where it gets, wrong,
Why it keeps coming up over and over again, and there may be an underlying issue, but it can be unfair to go back in old patterns and say things like,
Ooh.
you're always like that. Remember, you're doing it again. Unless, of course, it's justified, but doing it in a such aggressive, accusatory manner will not help you in the argument. Don't exaggerate actions of your spouse or the partner in your argument, because that will just enrage them more, and it will be more emotionally charged. It will give them a reason to point out that you are wrong in that regard, and if you're wrong in that regard, you may also be wrong in anything else that you say.
Hold on real quick before he continues. There's also sometimes where things are cyclical, which means I'm doing something that offends Travis, so he does something that offends me, and I do the same thing, and it's just a cyclical pattern that keeps going on and on and on. And a lot of times it's like, well, I wouldn't do that if you didn't do this, and then they could justifiably say, well, I wouldn't do this if you didn't do that. Yeah. Somebody has to decide to be this cycle breaker. Yeah. And, whoever it is, good for you. Yeah. But, saying you have to be the cycle breaker never works.
Sometimes you want to enrage the other person.
Travis! That is a different problem.
So try to stick to the facts and don't overinflate your numbers or whatever it is that you're talking about.
Don't overinflate your numbers.
Don't offer a fake apology or sarcastic, because that will immediately shut down the conversation.
You're offended.
A good thing to keep in mind is, rather than criticizing the person, criticize...
I'm sorry you feel that way. That's the biggest cop-out ever.
I'm sorry I had to do that so that blah, 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 blah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
The action. It takes out that personal element, and chances are that your significant other will feel less attacked by it, and therefore be able to continue to keep the conversation going. In conclusion, to argue like a gentleman is one of the most difficult things to do, because it means that you have to be vulnerable. You have to accept that you can be wrong. Wow. You have to admit that your opinions are maybe not always right. You have to listen to others, and you have to keep the conversation going. This is particularly difficult in a society where winning or weakness as a man is considered as bad. But in the long term, if you do those things, if you are tolerant, open-minded, and respectful of others, you will get respect back. It will help you in your career path, because people will look at you as someone that has honest rules and judges himself and others by the same standards. So you're not a hypocrite, but a good person. And it will also help you to grow and to become...
Can you say, like, excuse me, sir, but you're having poor etiquette and you're not quite a gentleman right now?
I don't know if that would work.
Better, and at the end of the day, win in that regard, which is much more important than winning a simple argument just by being louder or more right than the other person. If you enjoyed this video, please sign up for a newsletter. Make sure you check out the video on what it means to be a gentleman today here. And for more videos, stay tuned.
Cool.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was good stuff right there.
I love that. I love that. I love that idea of arguing well. Very cool.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much for that. Thank you guys for hanging out. If you enjoyed hanging out, like and subscribe. Check out this link below to request your own personal reaction video. Feel free to comment. Stay tuned. Stay positive.
We love you guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.